Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. The protests in Mozambique relating to the recent elections continues. And now up to 50 lives have been lost. It is bad enough for any country that they should have elections and the process is disputed. I think what makes the Mozambique situation even more distasteful is that Zimbabwe, our own Zanu PF government, has played a role in this. Let's just quickly listen to this video clip for an update of what is happening in Mozambique.
High Commissioner, Professor Talente Khusere. Prof, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. The riots in Mozambique are post-election riots, and oftentimes those are classified as deeply violent that borders on human rights violations. What is the view of the High Commission's office on the ongoing protests that we're seeing, post-election protests in particular?
Thank you so much. The truth of the matter is there have been a lot of violations of human rights in the Mozambican side, and especially regarding the killings of top opposition officials, which actually sparked the unrest. And there have been so many people who got killed throughout the process. When they were protesting, the state security has been sent and they killed more than 50 people now. And this is a result of a perpetuated debilitating dilemma within the region, which is the continuation of illegitimacy within our governments. The Mozambican election is fluid. There were a lot of irregularities throughout the electoral processes. And whatever that is happening in Mozambique right now is just a slap on the face of democracy. And it's actually a vulgar sobriquet on the face of the people of Mozambique and the Southern Africa region at large. And it's in this regard that we have launched an investigation to find out what exactly conspired in Mozambique, which is something that also led us into understanding that there have been an interference by the Zimbabwean president and the Zimbabwean ruling party, which has been sending people to vote from the Zimbabwean side when the Mozambican elections was happening.
Prof, what evidence is there to suggest that the Zimbabwean president had used Zimbabwean nationals to interfere and misconstrue or at least distort the outcome of the Mozambican elections?
Well, it's not the first time that the Zimbabwean president and the ruling is trying to interfere with the neighboring elections, and that is not a secret. We saw that happening in Botswana, which resulted in the people of Botswana protesting against him. We saw that even in South Africa. Now it's in Mozambique, and we have some videos that we got from a news media in Zimbabwe, which is called The Mirror, which actually went on the event where Zimbabweans were given voters' IDs, where Zimbabweans were given Mozambican IDs to vote for Frelimo, and they even testified in those videos that they had voted and they were happy that they had voted for Frelimo, considering that is their neighboring country and they could get some benefits. It's not a secret. We even saw one of the Frelimo officials campaigning for Zanu PF in Zimbabwe when there were elections in Zimbabwe. This is not a secret. It's something that needs to be faced.
Prof, have you managed to corroborate the video evidence in your possession that suggests that the Zimbabwean president had deployed Zimbabwean nationals to go and vote in the Mozambican elections? You have the video evidence which you received from news media outlet The Mirror. Has it been corroborated?
We have sent the video. I have sent the video to Sophie Mokoena, which actually shows Zimbabweans who have been voting, who had voted for Frelimo from the Zimbabwean side.
Just a very important question here, and I think this is then the crux of the matter. The Constitutional Court of Mozambique has not yet been able, has not yet ratified rather the election results. They're yet to do so. Given the profound claim that you're making that the Zimbabwean government, or at least the Zimbabwean president and Zimbabwean nationals, had interfered in the Mozambican election, does that mean that the Constitutional Court of Mozambique cannot ratify those results as free and fair?
Those results can never be rectified to be free and fair. You cannot rectify an illegality. We cannot allow such illegitimacy to be legitimized. The election was not free, the election was not fair, and the evidence is there. You have seen how many people died throughout the elections, and this evidence that we are giving out is a part of the rigging that happened in Mozambique.
Yeah. Prof. Talent Khusere, thank you so much for your time this evening. Really do appreciate it. This is the High Commissioner of the Southern African Human Rights Lawyers. We will reach out to Zimbabwean authorities, in particular the Office of the President of Zimbabwe, for a right of reply on the claim that they had interfered with the Mozambican elections.
This problem. And now it looks like it's escalating. What do you think, Ben?
Good day to everybody. Thank you for joining us. You know, first of all, I want to start by saying when democracy has failed or when democracy has been set aside, for those that say democracy does not exist, the opposite of democracy is what we are seeing right now in Mozambique. The killings, the destruction of property, you know, it's the whole 9 yards, the whole mess. That is the opposite of democracy. And unfortunately, and I'll repeat again, unfortunately, we have Zimbabwe's name, you know, popping up in these disputed elections. I think it was on this channel that we spoke about it before, you know, the election, to say, why is it Zimbabweans are being allowed to vote in these elections? Why are Zimbabweans being, you know, given national IDs? You know, you could expect probably an you know, dual citizenship for somebody that is staying next to the border, but not as deep as in Mashingo, getting Mozambican IDs. What? You know, it just beggars belief. Oh, what is going on? And this is it now. And the evidence, what this gentleman is saying, we saw it. Zimbabweans claiming that they have actually voted. Thereby, the moment when Zimbabweans voted in a process that did not belong to them or did not have anything to do with them, that failed democracy at that very moment. Now here we are. Zimbabwe is now a problem to other countries. It's a thorn in the flesh to the democratic process of Mozambique. They tried it, yes, in, you know, South Africa, like they claim, like in Botswana, we saw Patrick Chinamasa vowing to help. And when Zanu PF vows to help, we know Zanu PF has got a legitimacy issue for themselves, of themselves. This is it. This is when democracy fails. We get this bloodshed. It's really, really sad. Really, really sad.
I think one of the key points to note here is that the Mozambique authorities are really finding it very difficult to close the chapter in these elections. The Mozambique authorities cannot declare the results in the face of so much evidence that the process was flawed. And this is what has been fueling the protests. Even those who maybe did not realize that the elections were rigged are beginning to say, why are you not, if the authorities believe that the elections were free, fair, and credible, then announce the results. And they cannot do that. And no doubt, Frelimo would want the results announced, but they cannot do so for the simple reason that there's so much evidence that the elections were rigged. Some people have argued how many Zimbabweans voted. I think that is a question, important as it is, that is besides the point. May never be fully established how many Zimbabweans voted. What matters here is that there is definitely evidence that Zimbabweans participated in Mozambique's elections. And it was deliberate. And this was not an accident. This was deliberate and calculated. The individuals who were interviewed announced months ago that they were getting Mozambican IDs. The question that was asked at the time is, why is the Zimbabwe government allowing this to happen? And we know the regime allowed it to happen because it considers Frelimo to be its sister party in Mozambique. We have reached a crisis point. I don't know what is going to happen next, but SADC and all international community really must step up and address this challenge. This cannot be allowed to carry on. And I totally agree with the gentleman here, Professor, saying that this must be addressed. Indeed, it must be addressed. It's bad enough Zanu PF rigging elections and getting away with it. In the case of Zimbabwe, it must be said and emphatically said that they did it with the connivance of the corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless MDC-CCC opposition. And I think that is the reason why SADC could not act in the case of Zimbabwe. But in the case of Mozambique, SADC must act. And in this particular case, they must do something, send a message to Mnangagwa that he cannot mess around with other nations' elections, because we cannot afford this madness to continue.
And if I may add, Zimbabwe, particularly Emerson Mnangagwa has already congratulated, Frelimo for the win. They were, the first to congratulate way before even the results were actually announced. Which, I think it just fuels further speculation in how did you know the internal affairs of Mozambique to the extent that, you jumped the gun. You jumped the electoral body from doing its job. It's, I do agree with you to say, SADC as an institution, they cannot continue letting this just go by continuously. I mean, what image are you sending to the world? You know, it's not a good picture. Going forward, it's just, you know, muddying your name. You're dragging your name into disrepute. You're associated with rigged elections just because of one person. I believe it is one person that is going about doing all this dirty handiwork, which is Zanu PF. Before the elections, Frelimo sent a delegation to Harare. Before, you know, ANC went into elections, they met up with Zanu PF. Botswana is the same. They met up with Zanu PF. What is Zanu PF doing? Or what does Zanu PF have that it gives these, you know, political movements, you know, towards elections, except that Zanu PF itself is known for rigging? And thereby people come to the conclusion that they have gone to go and get tactics on how to rig the election. And now, unfortunately, it's a digital world, and they have evidence. And I'm sure, you know, if in our broadcast I think a couple of months back, we shared the same evidence and we asked the same questions. Why are Zimbabweans being allowed to go and interfere in a democratic process of another country? Now, here is the question, but unfortunately, it is accompanied by bloodshed, by destruction of property. This is all on Zanu PF. Let us put it all on Zanu PF, and they are answerable to all these claims. They should answer and be accountable. Why did you do it? Why did you allow it? And as far as I'm concerned, the Mozambican, you know, electoral body cannot go and finish off the job, or the constitutional court cannot go and finish off the job with such, you know, with such evidence, you know, right in their face. This is Zanu PF blatantly rigging. This is it. And for those that, you know, still have doubts, to say that Zanu PF rigs elections and that participating in rigged elections will bring us to this here, I think this should be the nail, you know, the final nail to the coffin. This should put away all lingering doubts. Zanu PF rigs elections. And by participating in these rigged elections, the only outcome is that there will be violence, or will have to accept those rigged results.
Here is a short clip of Mnangagwa insisting that the 2023 Zimbabwe elections were free, fair, and credible. And most significantly, that he doesn't care what the rest of the world says.
Vana vakatuka Zanu PF kana ini ndonyanyisa kufara kuita zvakanaka. Ukavona vavengi vako vachikurumbidza nekuchikanganisa, ukavona vachiti Zanu PF yakaipa, farai. You are doing correct things for your country. Hongu takaita maelections edu, kuna vamwe vaitaura zvisina musoro zvikanzi maelection anafamba zvakanaka, ndezvavo.
The sheer arrogance of that statement is totally unacceptable. SADC election observers, the AU election observers, condemned the elections as flawed and illegitimate. And to keep on saying deja vu is totally unacceptable. Of course, the elections were not free, fair, and credible. We did not even have a verified voters' roll, for Pete's sake. I think the problem with our election, the Zimbabwean elections, is threefold. One, we cannot deny that Zimbabwe has had the golden opportunity to implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. And we wasted that opportunity. We failed to implement even one token reform. Number two, these last elections, as much as SADC and the AU condemned the process, we had millions of Zimbabweans participating in those flawed elections. As much as some people have said, well, SADC should have condemned those elections. As one comment here from one of our listeners is saying, you cannot expect SADC to condemn and deny Zanu PF political legitimacy if you, the people yourself, participated in your millions in an election process, particularly when you knew that the election process was flawed. I think the decisive factor, point number three, is that even after SADC election observers and AU election observers had condemned last year's elections, Chamisa and these CCC guys still went up and took up their seats. And they even claimed that they'd won the seats in liberated zones. Elections are not judged on results. They're judged on the process. If the process is flawed, you do not look at who won what at the end of the day. The process is flawed. That is the point. That is where you draw the line. This process is flawed. We cannot give it legitimacy. But what CCC guys were saying is that they are willing to go along with the result and take up their seats on the gravy train. Of course, most of those people found themselves warming the seats and being putted out. Because as we know, CCC started imploding soon after the results were declared. So in the case of Zimbabwe, SADC, I believe, had no option but to turn a blind eye to the flawed electoral process that took place. Nonetheless, SADC cannot turn a blind eye to what is happening in Mozambique now. What we are seeing there is totally unacceptable. And the authorities themselves have found themselves in an impossible situation where they know if they were to endorse the result, giving Frelimo a victory in the face of so much evidence of foreigners, Zimbabweans, voting in the election process, that the process is flawed. They could only add petrol to the fire. On the other hand, failing to come up with a decision on what to do about what has happened about the elections is not helping the situation either. They should have made their decision. They could not. I think this is the time when SADC should really step in as the regional body and call for an emergency SADC meeting to help resolve the situation. As far as I'm concerned, the only rational decision to make is to accept that the elections last month in Mozambique were not free, fair, and credible, and they should be rerun again. The only rational thing to do is to accept that Zanu PF did interfere in that country's election, and they had no business to do so. And some kind of punishment should be administered. Zanu PF should be left in no uncertain terms that what they did was totally unacceptable. I think SADC should have the guts to stand up and help Mozambique get out of the situation they are in. They cannot sit on the fence. This issue cannot be swept under the carpet. This problem is not going away.
In conclusion, I would want to say, definitely we can see that Zanu PF's hand is in it. And it's quite sad that Zimbabwe, as a whole, is being pointed at as, being the rotten apple of the Southern African region, of which it is, by virtue that Zanu PF is from our country, Zimbabwe. It's really sad for those that, really think that democracy does not exist and democracy is just, a belief. This is evidence where democracy does not exist. Bloodshed, killing of innocent people who are fighting for their rights. I hope, like you said, SADC will intervene and, stop this whole madness of unnecessary killings and, let's find the way back to a democratic path. If the sooner the better. Because, infrastructure, human lives, those are very, very important to our sustenance and our existence as human beings. It's sacred. I really hope for Mozambique they find a lasting solution to this here problem, and for Southern Africa as a whole, because I hear borders are closed, lots of monies, and resources are being lost that could have benefited Southern Africa as a whole, or even Africa as a whole, because we know we trade, with a lot of people, a lot of countries, and that is very essential for the development of our country. So I hope they find a lasting solution. And to Zanu PF, I would hope that they stop this madness of rigging elections and undermining, democracy and infringing on other people's rights. This is a Mozambican, right. Let them be the ones to decide who they want to govern them. It is their right, it is their preserve to keep it for themselves and not for Zanu PF to go and take it away from everybody. They're taking it from Zimbabwe. They shouldn't be going and taking it away, for other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. So to reiterate, the situation here is that the situation in Mozambique has reached crisis point. SADC leaders must accept that the situation in Mozambique is not going to resolve itself. The fact that the authorities cannot declare the results because they know that the process was not free, fair, and credible. On the other hand, dragging it on without announcing the result is not helping the situation at all. I think SADC should step in. They should call an emergency SADC meeting and come up with a SADC solution to the problem. In my view, they have got to step in and accept the election process in Mozambique was not free, fair, and credible, and come up with an arrangement of some government of national unity while fresh elections are organized. I think SADC should also address the issue of Zimbabwe interfering in Mozambique's elections. There is no doubt that the crisis in Mozambique has been exasperated by Zanu PF. It's blatant interference in other nations' elections. This must be stopped. And to turn a blind eye to Zanu PF's interference is a big mistake. I seriously hope that we do not allow the situation in Mozambique to continue. 50 lives have already been lost. A lot of property have been destroyed in these violent protests. They will only get worse. For God's sake, have the courage to step up, accept responsibility, and end this madness. Thank you very much.